Evening guys, hope you've had a good weekend. The last thing we need to look at now for our unit of promotion, sponsorship and sport is the impact sponsorship actually has upon sport. There are obviously advantages, but there's also disadvantages as well. The first thing you need to be aware of is obviously the scheduling of sports or sporting events. And this could be changing the times of events and kick-offs to suit the TV audiences and sponsors. So for example, you've got Sky TV, who have as many fixtures as they can. They buy fixtures from the Premier League, put money into football, so therefore on a Saturday night at 5:30, on a Sunday at 4 o'clock, and on a Monday at 8 o'clock, there's always going to be a live televised game. This again causes problems for the supporters because then they're normally used to a traditional 3 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday, so therefore changing the times causes problems in terms of transport and things like that. We also had a situation back in 2009 in the Champions League final when two English sides, Manchester United and Chelsea, played each other. The final itself was over in Russia, but due to it being in Russia, it had to be at their local time. They wanted it at 9 o'clock, so it appealed to their public. The issue with that is Russia's on the same time zone as England, so the Champions League final actually kicked off at 9 o'clock. Bear in mind, two English teams had played it and didn't finish because it went to penalties at 11:30. So that had an impact on the amount of people who watched it. The next thing is looking at the quality of the product. Sponsorship can influence the quality of the product because the greater the sponsorship, the more money that's put in, therefore there's an increased quality in that sport. And an example of this is in cricket, in something called the IPL, which is the Indian Premier League for 2020 cricket. And what happened was there was an issue 2 years ago with an English player called Kevin Pietersen. Probably England's best player. He refused to play in a few tests for the ECB, which is English Cricket Board, because he wanted to go and play in the IPL. The reason he did this was because the money involved, him to go away for 2 months of the year, he was going to get over £1 million to go and play in the IPL, compared to in England, cricket players sign something called a central contract from the ECB. He'll probably make between £300,000 to £400,000 a year off this contract. So he had to weigh up, was it worth going to play in the IPL for more than £1 million for 2 months, or stay in England, go and tour, I think it was Pakistan at the time, or Sri Lanka, for the money that he gets, which is the £300,000, to go and play in a test match. So he weighed it up and he went and played in the IPL, which again caused problems in England, because people were questioning his loyalty, whether he should play for England again. It opened a whole can of worms up. Another thing to do with the quality of product and the impact of sponsorship is in increasing and improving the stadium, the players, and due to the increase in media coverage. And we have this is a major problem in the Premier League at the minute, because for example at Arsenal in London, the cost of a season ticket there is £850. Yeah. It's that expensive because there was that much money put in to improve the Emirates. They moved from hybrid to the Emirates back in 2004, I think it was, and it cost them something like £80 million to make the stadium, to build it. So therefore they had to put ticket prices up to get that money back from sponsorship. Compare that to Sunderland Newcastle up in the northeast, where season tickets, you can get a season ticket for as least as £3 to £350, compared to £850 is a lot of money. The last problem and the last impact that sponsorship has upon sport is for pay-per-view and internet and satellite TV. Pay-per-view in particular. I remember I watched the boxing match 2 months ago, which was Carl Froch against George Groves. It was on Sky Television, but it was on pay-per-view, it was on box office, and we had to pay £23 for it, which is fair enough because it was a big fight. Two British boxers fighting each other, big fight, world title fight. The issue was they didn't fight till 10:30, 11 o'clock. They had a 10-fight card and the main fight wasn't on till 11 o'clock. Well, if you, at your age, 14, 15, you're a big boxing fan, you pay for this fight, your parents pay for this fight, what could be the downside of that? A, you could fall asleep and miss the fight. B, you could be bored because you're not really a boxing fan, you just want to see that fight, so therefore the 9 fights beforehand could turn you off boxing and make you miss that fight. So obviously that was an issue as well. The internet causes problems because of the streaming. the free streaming that you can get online to watch football games, movies, things like that. So that has an impact. But also satellite TV. Sky Television more or less control, I would say, 90% of what's being shown on the television for sport, and football in particular. So therefore, they're putting X amount of money in to the Premier League. They expect to show 3 games a weekend. You have 3 games a weekend on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, yeah? That's going to affect the clubs. And not just the clubs, but the supporters. A Newcastle fan, for example, Newcastle have got Norwich a week on Tuesday. They're going to have to travel down to Norwich. It could have been a Saturday game, but it hasn't. It's been put on a Tuesday night, so it's on Sky Television. And you've got to think, as a Newcastle fan, it's a 500-mile round trip. That's the impact of sponsorship, because Sky have said this game needs to be played then, because this is one of the games that they want shown that would generate a lot of money in terms of revenue, but they don't think about the fans. As well as there being a disadvantage like we've talked about there's also a lot of benefits. Sponsorship, and because of the money that's put into sport, you will see a wider audience. For example, Formula 1, the Olympics, big events in the world. Yeah, the Olympics is the biggest sporting event in the world, and that will be shown all the way around the world. Yeah, and so therefore the audience is massive. So the money that they put in, they get the benefit of the wider audiences. The next thing that comes from that is if they're watching sport on a regular basis, and the audience, and obviously the wider audience in terms of everyone around the world watching this, you would think it'll increase participation. So for example, Mo Farah, when he won his 2 gold medals in London 2012, he increased and he improved the profile of long distance running. So now there'll be an increase in participation. So that's another impact of sponsorship. And the last one is survival in a competitive environment. And what the advantage and the benefit of that is, last season in the Premier League, because of the TV deal that was going to go ahead with Sky Television, Sky said each football club that stayed in the Premier League would get £60 million worth of TV money. So therefore, you're a football club who, for example, your Crystal Palace at the minute, who's in the Premier League, your Norwich City, your Sunderland even, Newcastle United, £60 million to those sides is a lot of money. That means that 60 million, that means they can survive in a competitive environment, buy players, bid for players that you would find the top 4, the richest clubs like Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, they would be able to compete with them for their signatures. So that is the impact of sponsorship. So we've got the disadvantages where we've looked at scheduling and marginalisation when it comes to looking at the TV and satellite TV and pay-per-view. You've also got the quality of the product where we've talked about the IPL and Kevin Peterson and the cost of a season ticket at Arsenal. But then you've got the benefits, the other side of that, which is looking at the wider audience, so more people watching the sport. You get an increase in participation because more people are watching the sport, and therefore that sport or that football club will survive because of the money that comes in. If we're relating it to our tasks, and in terms of our past merit distinction, what you've got to think about is you've got to look at the impact of sponsorship. Yeah. So this will come into our exploring sponsorship and promotion. This will come into comparing and contrasting different sporting events. Yeah. So we can talk about how the World Cup, the scheduling, the quality of the product, the marginalisation, the wide audience, the increased participation, the survival, comparing that, and that's in Brazil, comparing that to London 2012, you compare the two. Yeah. So if we're looking at that, that is looking at basically comparing, which is our distinction task, comparing and contrast the impact of sponsorship on 2 selected sports, individuals, on teams or events. Yeah. So you've got to compare and contrast the 2, and you can talk around those 6 different issues that we've touched upon tonight and compare the two sporting events. So that's the impact of sponsorship.